conclusion that 5 is not a perfect square. So when I take the square root of 5, it's just going to be the square root of 5. Did y'all get to that conclusion?
No.
We didn't even get to nothing.
Well, remember, you guys were working on this in your groups before the bell rang.
We had a group.
We didn't get that far.
Oh, okay. In your group, you didn't get that far.
Yeah. We only
That's
got
why I was telling you.
I know, but I'm telling you that this is what you should have been doing before the bell rang.
We didn't get this far.
We was right there where it say
when the bell
sine
rung.
of b equals cosine of x equals negative square root
We
of 5
stop.
over 3.
We stop right here
And then
when
we
you
stop.
put Pythagorean cosine squared b equals.
You trying to take her side, you trade.
Yeah, I just moved the Pythagorean theorem over. Okay, so you couldn't have had this then if you didn't do the green part. There's no way you would have this part.
I mean, we on the side, my bad.
Okay, so I'm telling you how to find the cosine.
Okay.
So this is going through the steps of how to find the cosine. And we use the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, if I just need cosine by itself, that means I'm subtracting the sine, correct? Do you agree with that? If I need cosine by itself, I am subtracting the sine. I will just erase and start over.
I didn't see how you got square root of 5 and from 4 over 9.
Man, you did that yesterday. You did.
All right, here we go. Pythagorean identity. The Pythagorean for this would be sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. I'm going to plug in what I know. Sine squared of x is what? What's sine of x?
It's going to be
What is sine of x?
sine of x to the power of 3.
No, what is sine of x? Negative 2 over 3, because it told me that sine of x is negative 2 over 3. And I wrote it down that sine of x is negative 2 over 3. So it's information that was given to me. So then I have negative 2 over 3 squared plus cosine squared over x equals 1. What I did yesterday, I told you guys at this point we should understand that all we're doing is squaring and subtracting from 1, so you shouldn't have to go through this whole step every single time. A negative times a negative is a positive. Javon, you said you didn't understand, so let me finish my sentence before you interrupt me. A negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 2 squared is going to become positive 4, and 3 squared becomes 9. Now I have cosine squared x equals 1. Cosine squared x is still not by itself. So I'm going to subtract 4 over 9. And when I subtract 4 over 9, I get that this is 5 over 9. Still, cosine of x is not by itself. How do I square something? I take the, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now I have cosine of x equals
That's what I'm saying. How you get 5?
5. Okay, 1 over 1 is 9 over 9. What's 9 minus 4?
Oh, 5, okay. I didn't remember that yesterday. That's what I was doing.
That's why I said you have a whole piece of pie and it's cut into 9 slices and you eat 4 of those slices. How many do you have left? Okay, so then you should have gotten that cosine of x is square root of 5 over 3. Well, up here, it told us a restriction of our function. So for x, it told us that it lies between pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. And what that restriction means is that it lies between 90 and 270. Do we agree? That pi over 2 is 90 degrees and that 3 pi over 2 is 270? Yes? Okay? What that tells us is that our sign has to be something. Because the only things that are positive and between 90 degrees and 270 degrees are sine and tangent. Remember the whole all strippers take off clothes? Or all students?
You tell us that.
I did.
Is this that you talking about?
I did. Huh?
That was our video.
We did. I have a video. You can go back and watch it. No.
I can't remember that.
Okay? I know it's probably school inappropriate, but something's true, and you remember it. So here goes. A stands for all tangents are positive if it's in the first quadrant. Okay, first quadrant is from 0 to 90. Okay? In the second quadrant, from 90 to 180, that's a 1. Please go with it. It's a fat one. The only thing that is positive is sine, and everything else is negative. In the third quadrant, from 180 to 270, the only thing that is positive is tangent. And so everything else has to be negative. So they told us that our angle lies between 90 and 270. So if our angle lies between 90 and 270, is it a positive value or a negative value?
Negative.
Negative, because we're talking about cosine. And is cosine positive in these? No. Cosine is?
The x, which is negative.
And the cosine is the x-axis, which is a negative value. So therefore, when we found the square root of 5 over 3, it's not a positive square root of 5 over 3. It's actually a negative square root of 5 over 3. And that's why they gave you that restriction. It said I lie between this and that. So because I lie between that, my trig value is either going to be positive or negative. And if you remember the little saying, then you'll know what's positive and you'll know what is negative. All right, so do I have everything I need to plug into the formula? I have cosine of A, sine of A, sine of B, and cosine of B. So all I have to do is plug in. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in. So when I plugged in for sine of A, I got square root of 3 over 2. When I plugged in for cosine of B, I got negative square root of 5 over 3. When I plugged in for sine of, what's this? Sine of A? Cosine of A, I got 1/2. And when I plugged in for sine of B, I got negative 2 over 3. And now at this point, I just multiply. Square root of 3 times negative square root of 5 is negative square root of 15. Because 3 times 5 is 15. And because there's only one negative, it's going to stay negative. 2 times 3 is 6. So that this term is done. On to the next term. I have 1 times negative 2 is, so I have negative 2. And 2 times 3 is 6. Because they share a common denominator, that means they can be put over one denominator. Because they share a common denominator, they can be put over one denominator. So my final answer is negative square root of 15 minus 2 over 6.
It was added to each other. How you make it negative?
Because what's 1 times negative 2?
Negative 2. Okay.
So I turn my positive into a negative. I don't know how my phone is dying. All right. You will have one of these problems for your homework. I think it's problem number 9, possibly, for your homework. All right, so verify the following identity. What this is doing is, again, you're going to identify your A and your B and identify the rule you're following. So what's A? What's A? A is pi, because if this is A plus B. So A is pi and B is x. If it says cosine of A plus B, what formula am I using? If it says cosine of A plus B,
CACB minus SASB.
so CACB minus SASB. So I need to plug in the cosine of A, and what did we say the cosine of A was? Pi. Times the cosine of B, which do we know what it is? It's just x. Minus the sine of pi times the sine of x. Well, what's the cosine of pi according to our unit circle? Remember, cosine is your x value. Look at your unit circle, cosine of pi. What is it? What'd y'all say? Yes. All right, what's the sine of pi? 0. And 0 times anything does what? Cancels it out. So my answer is? Put my negative on the wrong side. I did. -1 cosine. And that's a proof. So you identify what you have, identify the formula to use, plug in the information, and simplify.
Well, I didn't see it go easier. But then we do something else to see like,
IDK. Alright, so on your homework, let's get to it. Let's identify some things that we should know about the homework. So on problems 1 through 3, you're going to use the 3 steps. Step 1, you're going to do what?
Identify your A and B.
Identify my A and my B. So on 1 through 3, you should be able to go through and say A is this, B is that. Correct? So what's the A for 1?
75.
And what's the B for 1? Okay? And then step 2 is I do what? Identify the pattern. So my pattern is I have sine of A times cosine of B plus cosine of A times sine of B. Which pattern is that? Huh? There you go. Sine A plus B. So now I just plug in and simplify. So. Why are you rewriting it?
Oh yeah, we don't have to rewrite it.
No. We just said A is 75, B is 15. My rule is
It's already up there.
Yes.
you said my rule was sine of A plus B. So plug in and simplify. What's the sine of 90?
What?
What's the sine of 90? It's already written there for you. You just got to go through the 3 steps. Identify, plug in, and simplify. All right, that's what you're doing 1 through 3. Now we're going to move on to the next ones. 4 through 5, you're just proving like we did on number 6. Okay, so again, you're going to identify your AB and then substitute in and simplify. I don't know, ma'am.
Okay.
So this would be my A and this would be my B, and then what would be my pattern?
Sine of A plus B is the first one, right?
So my formula that I would use is,
SACB plus CASB.
there you go. And then you just plug in and simplify. Use your unit circle if need be.
You said SAB. Plus what?
It's on your paper.
What you said?
It's the first one.
SAC.
No, what?
Yeah. Wait, you did it right?
Sine of A times cosine of B.
So,
The cosine
Sack and cast.
yeah, that's what I meant. Second.
All right. On 6, you're simplifying. So on 6 and 7 and 8, be careful because you're doing it how many times? Twice. Each term has its own formula to follow. Each term has its own formula to follow.
That's what I like. That's what we had did it too.
Yeah. And at the end, you're going to recombine there.
Wait, I think I did it wrong.
Okay, each form has its own follow. So this one's going to have its own AB, and this one's going to have its own AB.
This one too?
6, 7, 8. What time do we get out of here? Alright, I think I have 2 more minutes to get you guys through it. Alright, so be careful. Make sure you solve them separately and then combine at the end. On to the back. The back gets a little difficult. Number 9 is like number 4 on our notes with the alpha and the beta. Okay? Remember, if you don't like alpha and beta, it can just become A and B. Changing the variable doesn't make it any different. Okay? What you just have to be mindful of is your range. So this is from 0 to 90, and this is from 90 to 180. So when you get your sine and cosine, you got to determine whether they are positive or negative based on where they're located. Okay? So this is like number 4. On 10, 10 is like number 5. It gives you your cosine, so you have to find what first? Your sine. It gave you your cosine, so you have to find your sine. 11 is verifying. Be mindful of 11. Do them in parts. And remember, this is your goal. The right side is your goal. On 13, what was I going to say? On 13, you either can choose the right or the left side to work. Some people may find